change requires people to universally and simultaneously agree on a single aspect. And so to coordinate that is a huge undertaking unless there's some pivotal moment. It's things like, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech or Greta Thunberg's conversation about climate. It catalyzes and polarizes people as a collective to move forward. What stops that, I find, typically happens at three levels. Structural, so we don't have the rules or processes or whatever to do that. Political, I'm not interested in doing that because I'm quite comfortable the way it is. And social, which is really around what's an individual's motivation to contribute to the collective that allows everyone to move forward. And it's managing the social aspects of multiple stakeholders, usually for those bigger type movements, that's required.
There are lots of layers of a narrative. There are things that are being said. There are things equally as powerful that are not being said. And I think what I'm more interested in is not necessarily lamenting the problems anymore, because I feel at this point in the human story it almost has become a luxury to be able to stop and do that. I think that we're at a point, because of how our world has evolved, how technology has evolved, the pace of the spread of people and information, that we actually have to start thinking of different solutions.
The big conversations that are impacting society, they're not in academia anymore. You'll only have a few hundred reads of any philosophy paper that gets released to the public. Where the real debate is going on is online now, and it is on YouTube and it is on Reddit forums. And what the internet has done, it has democratized education and the spread of information in a really exceptional way.
In the past, if we go back to the suffragettes, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have scale, they didn't have societal support, they didn't have financial support, they didn't have any of the things that a modern female now can have access to, which means they're automatically at a technical advantage to that previous generation. So what do they want to do with that, I guess is the question. And where do they need to take that?
I think you can't sit still and just assume that it's all going to be okay. Everybody has to have this self-improvement, mode of thinking for us to really dig in and change the narrative.
If we're talking about sharing the jobs of the future in a more equal way between men and women, then we have to be talking about sharing everything else in life more equally between men and women. The important thing is that there is equal opportunity to do that.
The biggest challenge we have is until men work flexibly, nothing will change for women. It's nowhere near where it needs to be for significant change. For us to get 50-50, 200 years, that's what they're saying based on the current pace of change.
People estimate that it's going to take between 80 and 200 years to resolve this problem. I think Julia Gillard said 200 years, and that just seems unreasonable for so many reasons. And women are going to be asked to do more despite the fact that there's less of them and they're already overburdened. We have to expand the pool. We have to ask more of people who aren't doing enough. We have to try and find ways to rapidly accelerate the changes, because it's just not going fast enough.
Gender equality conversations are often focused on low female representation in positions of power within the workforce. Whilst we have demonstrated through this series that this is an incredibly important focus, we have also highlighted the need to make these conversations broader and take a big picture view of gender roles across all aspects of how we live, not just in the workplace. The impacts of COVID-19 has delivered a huge shake-up of how businesses approach flexible work arrangements. So right now we are uniquely positioned in an unforeseen time of opportunity for men and women to redefine traditional parenting roles, to create greater equality in domestic responsibilities. And it's through creating greater opportunity for equality at home that we help support greater opportunities for gender equality in the workplace. One organisation championing for a more widespread recognition of how dads can contribute to families is the Fatherhood, a lifestyle resource that delivers support, advice and inspiration. The Fatherhood disarms dads with humour and arms them with life-changing strategies. It's a new movement for modern dads designed to help them survive and thrive.
So the fatherhood is like a celebration of something that's happening in society already, which is this rise of the hands-on dad, the involved father, and myself and the two other guys, dads that co-founded the Fatherhood, saw this happening around us and didn't see it then reflected in media. So when you look at a lot of the parenting websites and blogs, there's a whole stack of them, Amelia, Essential Baby, Babyology, that are female skewed. And we were involved dads and we just didn't see that then reflected. So we thought there was a great opportunity to have the voice of dads reflected and then support dads through this process. We felt that becoming a dad was the greatest moment in our life, like the highest of highs, but the lowest of lows, a lot of challenges. And we were sick of the comments that might be made in a sporting locker room when someone's partner becomes pregnant. It's like, oh, your life's over, you're never going to get out again, and those type of things. So we wanted to change that narrative into being, yeah, there's challenges, but it's the greatest thing you'll do. And it's kind of the Champions League of manhood in lots of ways. An amazing opportunity for you to redefine yourself, to step into being really actively involved. And in my opinion, the labels of primary and secondary carer are really harmful because they're asking a partnership, a couple, to define themselves in that way, and someone steps into this assistant kind of role. How much better it is as a partnership where both are seeing themselves as carers, as financial providers, and what a huge opportunity we've got to do that without these labels that can be so limiting.
And so there has been stereotypically, that expectation that the dad might need to be the breadwinner. So if he doesn't do that, then what societal view is there, on these dads that are more hands-on and potentially not being the breadwinner?
Yeah, I know I experienced this as a father. As soon as I became a dad, I was like, I must provide. It sort of just kicks in automatically. But providing doesn't need to mean, actually today, it doesn't mean just financially providing. It's financially plus emotionally and lots of other ways that dads can now define themselves as a provider for their family. And a lot of that is emotional presence and being there for them.
My primary objective or feeling is that I need to be making the family financially secure. But then, mixing in enough time with all the kids and making sure I know what they're up to, and so I can have a good chat with them about their day. And you can certainly tell at home when the kids, or they haven't seen you much, because they show a bit more affection and that sort of thing, I think. And so that's a time that I know that I haven't been around enough and have to spend a little bit more time at home.
My experience as a dad, my wife's literally carrying our children for 9 months, and I'd go to work and my life hadn't changed that much. And I remember being in an antenatal class of men, and it was just such a fantastic couple of hours of sitting there reflecting on the fact that I was soon to become a father. And the guy that was running our class, he was just fantastic, and he said, look, guys, if you want to be a good dad, just turn up. And I remember sort of sitting back and reflecting on that, thinking, I can do that, I can get involved. So he said, look, when you're at the hospital in a couple of weeks' time and they're bathing your baby, get in there. And when they're changing the nappies, give it a go. Because at that point, no one knows any more than you do. And by doing that and encouraging dads to become actively involved, it removes this gap. Because if dads aren't involved in that stage, then the mums will become better at changing nappies and more confident. They'll just know the way things happen, and that pushes dads to this kind of assistant role. But if dads are involved from the get-go and really getting involved, then that increases their confidence, they become more involved, and that frees mum from this role of being the primary carer and provides opportunities where they can go to be in the workforce far sooner.
It's incredibly hard to be a good parent. It is not a guy versus girl thing. It is so hard to raise kids. We now know that men and dads suffer postnatal depression at the exact same level that women do. And if you think that it's a gender-based thing, if you make it about that, I think we all lose. I think it has to be about what is the right thing to raise kids in a modern, complex, terrifying society. And I think if we can enable all parents to support one another, we'll all be better off.
I have had a dream since I was younger to be the first woman to Mars.
Well, I wanted to become like an engineer and architect when I'm older. Well, I've always felt like becoming a statistician.
I want to either become like a mad scientist or an astronomer or a paleontologist.
To transcend our current gender narratives and drive real changes, to move away from repeated conversations, we need to work together as a society. And this involves parents, schools, and education programs. We have made good progress and are seeing stronger foundations laid for gender inclusion and diversity. So what do our future young women think about potential gender barriers to their success? And how can we help them navigate this?
I think we're all sort of going away from the stereotypes that have been present in like the old days. So I think it won't be a challenge for many of us now, since we're all trying to go into that new phase, but it definitely is a challenge for lots of like probably girls in college now. So I would probably think that it is still a challenge but can be overcome.
I think there's a lot of schools in particular recognising that this is something they can do something about, and they're starting to initiate programs that creating that shift. This will be the first cohort that have moved from their initial awareness of this change needing to happen to being at a point where they'll be the majority of the school. And I think we're at that tipping point. But even they are saying it's too early to say how well this is doing. But what they can confirm is that it's extraordinary. It's making extraordinary inroads into making that change happen.
I think that parents need to understand that things are changing, and certainly by the time their children are in the workplace, it'll be a very different culture, and that these girls need to be encouraged to go in there to help change those cultures so that they can be a positive influence. And parents need to realise that their fears are often unfounded.
I think from my perspective, the most important thing is how do we help people understand that empathy and communication between adults will lead to better small adults who will become the leaders of tomorrow.
Going forward, what we'll be organising is to have parent workshops in which we discuss what their fears are, alternative career pathways for girls so that they can move forward and feel confident in their skills. And again, workshops with teachers so that the teachers themselves can also encourage the girls so that they know that there's other ways that they can do this, that they can go into different areas, they know where to refer them to, clubs that might excite them, competitions they can be involved in, and connect them with mentors.
I think that it doesn't matter who codes. We have a group of 8 and there's actually only 3 boys.
It just proves even more to everyone else that we definitely can do this, and of course there's a chance, and yeah, we can do this.
So what does it mean to transcend the gender narrative? What does equality of opportunity look like? And how can we work together to achieve this?
It's virtually genderless. I think the fact that you're a man or a woman, people don't even ask that. Like, I go to conferences and we're meeting quotes and things like that, and, you know, fabulous woman, and she's the first woman. And people still kind of reference women like it's an amazing thing, whereas I'd just like to become normal as it is to see a man in that position. And people don't even mention it as a point of difference anymore. Like, everyone is just who they are.
Having been the father of 2 girls and a son, I've got a horse in the race, right? Like, so in my perspective, I absolutely want equality based on all dimensions, not just gender. And I think that we've made a lot of progress, and I think we continue to make progress. I don't see many dinosaurs in the workplace, even in STEM fields, but I'm not a fan of quotering because I think it does a disservice to both sides of the equation. And I think it ultimately creates a sense of tension and hostility. But I believe that we fundamentally need to agree on a plan. We need to recruit males to the cause, but I think we need to agree on something that's sort of the middle ground, where not one person has to be disadvantaged to make up for the wrongs of the past.
As a father with 2 daughters, what I want for them is that the issue of quotas, biases, etc. are gone by the time that they enter the workforce, so that they're assessed based on the brilliance that they bring rather than what they look like or their gender background, etc.
Let's create the world that we all would like to be a part of, and not just the world that some people want to be a part of.
You need to bring everybody along for the ride. Not everybody will respond the same way, and not everybody has the same motivation, not everybody thinks the same way, and that's the frustrating and amazing part of our world. It's not going to be the same gender narrative, but if you can work out what each demographic wants, how they're going to respond, what they need to hear, and what support structures they need to change that, then you'll be successful.
When we move into that space of opening our heart to the idea that people are going to have different opinions and that's okay, and our job is to get curious about that, once we become curious about what cultivates those perspectives we don't agree with or like, we're more able to address the issues that create them in the first place.
The complex and most challenging part of being alive today is that we are suddenly overloaded with information which is prolific the world over. We are getting way more signal, but we're also getting way more noise. And to be able to cut through that noise and say, I am going to sit here and be with you, just with you, and hear what you're saying, is something that we are not really taught in school. We're not really encouraged to do much of at any point in our lives, but parents, mums and dads, have the opportunity to teach that to our kids and do that and practice that ourselves, because that is the only way that I think we're all going to level up as a species.
I think we're at the cusp. We're at this point in our history as a human civilization where we're being asked whether we can transcend and make that leap into something that goes much deeper and much more beyond what how we're choosing to define ourselves now.
In more than any time in history, we can't actually predict the future like we could. And so I think to take historical data and take it forward in a linear fashion is actually naive. We might have a vague idea in the next 2, 5, maybe 10 years. Beyond that, I don't think anyone can predict it. And so let's create a future where everything's possible, first of all.
So whilst this is the end of the documentary series, it is only the beginning of our shared journey to reframe gender equality conversations. We encourage you to share these episodes, to spark interactions and to lean into the more difficult conversations that might challenge your current thoughts about equality. Change, big change at a widespread community level, requires collective contributions. To successfully transcend the barriers and limitations of our current gender narratives, we need to engage equal participation in these changes from all genders. Through this, we can hopefully work together to rise to a position beyond gender barriers, to a place where each individual is viewed for the skills and capabilities they bring as a person, to a time when we are valued by what we can contribute to our shared human experience. We will continue to raise the profile of this documentary series by looking for ways to distribute the content further. Please let us know if you have any ideas or connections to help us achieve this. We would also like to thank our major project partners, the Community Broadcasting Foundation, Inspiring South Australia, Narrative Marketing and Channel 44, whose support made this project possible.